Before we get into today's discussion, we also want to thank our amazing sponsors, both of whom have helped to transform some of the most successful companies in the world, especially over the last few months, when even more pressure is being seen for businesses to be more directed and more focused in their digital-first offerings. So if your organization is looking to implement new digital strategies, they can help. Conrad and Adobe design and build compelling experiences that have transformed businesses like FedEx and NYU with innovative tools to help them thrive in an online world. Please look for more insights in our event wrap-up, and in the meantime, check out their websites to learn more about how Conrad and Adobe can help you and your business thrive in a digital world. And if you're enjoying today's session, we have a series coming up. So be sure to tune into our future events. One on June 11th, where we'll be talking with women leaders who are shaping stronger pathways. And also on June 24th, where we'll be discussing how world-class brands are winning with data-driven marketing. But let's dive into the panel today. We've got about 55 minutes to do this. And hold on to your seats. So it's going to be a good session. I don't want to or need to belabor the realities we're all having to deal with the past few months. What is interesting to see and witness is the hyper acceleration of innovation across all sectors and businesses. Today, we're going to focus on the impact of this new reality on how teams and individuals are able to create strategies and develop and deploy new evolved digital products and adapt to the new behaviors we're seeing in the marketplace. Were the strategies and priorities before the lockdown still the best strategies, but needing to be accelerated? Or did the roadmap need to be thrown out to focus solely on new opportunities and strategic directions based on evolving customer needs and business needs? So before we get into the conversation, I'd like to introduce our panelists and have them share with us their responsibilities in terms of this topic today. So let's start with Maria. Hi, Maria. How are you doing?
Hi everyone. Pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for the invitation. I run the CityBot at Citibank. It's a conversational AI product. We've had a tremendous amount of volume increase since COVID-19. The inflow of messages to our live agents and the bot has been really instrumental in trying to contain that inflow and make it more manageable for the limited live agents we have.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today, Maria. And we can't wait to unpack how you're adapting to these changes and how you're working with your teams to deliver on your roadmap. Thank you.
Yep.
I also want to introduce Daryl. Daryl, are you there?
I am.
Hey, Daryl, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. My name is Daryl. I've been with Walmart for almost 25 years, and I'm really excited to be here today. I've spent most of my career on the retail side. In about 5 years, I flipped over to e-commerce and have led the online grocery business in Canada. And recently, last year, moved into supply chain for the e-commerce business and leading that group. I still own online grocery, and that has been a ride in the last couple of months. You know, think about a world where you're going to achieve your 5-year plan target in the same year, like this year, and having to adjust the product plan and all our operational plans and everything connected to that has been incredible. So I'm excited to talk about that today.
Fantastic. Thanks, Daryl. Can't wait to unpack that. And finally, we've got Michael tuning in from New York. Hey, Michael.
How you doing, everyone? Thank you for having me. I am the product lead for 3 of our different products in our messaging platforms group. And our focus primarily is to make sure that we are providing consistent messaging across our different channels, such as email and notifications, and also providing great experiences for folks who are trying to purchase our actual digital and HD subscriptions.
Amazing.
So thank you.
Just a small responsibility at one of the most prolific and much loved publishers and news outlets in the world. So thanks so much for joining us, Michael.
Thank you.
Looking forward to hearing your insights there. I want to move into a quick question with each of our panelists around what they're dealing with at their companies. And starting with Maria, it seems every time we enter a global economic crisis, the banking and financial services industry urgently needs to innovate to offer more support, value, and convenience for their customers, especially as we see more and more disruptors entering your space. What are some of the ways you're helping to prioritize the most important digital initiatives at Citi? And what are the customer behaviors you're witnessing that are supporting those decisions?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the Citi Bot is a conversational product. It serves customers with help in the way that customers are able to come in, get a quick answer, get out, hopefully on their way out to either self-serve themselves or if needed, get routed to a live agent. We are the first kind of interface of helping you get something done with the bank. Whether that is a small question or a big question, we aim to have such broad coverage that we're able to help you and help to contain that conversation within just the bot experience. As you can imagine, with increased volumes, there's just been a lot more leadership excitement about what the bot can do for the business, as much as there's always been an excitement what it can do for the customers. But I think this is the moment where the two have finally aligned and our business leaders have really recognized the power of being able to give technology a very human voice and a very human touch with empathy and the ability to self-serve. So really enabling, empowering the customers with the ability to self-serve. And, as the saying goes, who drives your digital transformation? In the case of the bot, we started 3 years ago, but the acceleration that COVID provided has been tremendous. It's, May 21st, and we're basically done with what we initially had on our roadmap for 2020. So we're in this whole new world where so much has been accelerated that we have to define the path forward from scratch in May. So it's been tremendously exciting, and I'm happy to dive more into this as the conversation progresses.
That's awesome. Thanks, Maria. That's going to be fascinating. And how we actually get used to new working processes too is going to be interesting with remote working. Michael, the New York Times has evolved its strategy brilliantly over the past decade and become arguably the most reliable source of information for millions across the globe. And the Times has also had a dual responsibility of delivering growth, both through ad revenue and new monthly subscriptions, while delivering essential news and information in a time of a pandemic to ensure that people can be more informed to make more informed decisions about safety in their communities. With this balancing act in mind and the responsibilities you touched on, how have you prioritized your roadmap to deliver on growth and access to the news?
Absolutely. So as we all are aware of, advertising has taken a hit across the entire industry. So with the work that we have aligned and focused on with senior leadership, it's primarily focused on growth and engagement opportunities. So anything that are not related to those two focus groups are things that we're going to delay for the time being. And while also trying to make sure that we're balancing our high standard for creating great experiences for both our internal and external users. And to add more to that, I also want to talk about some company-wide initiatives that we recently rolled out as part of that. So the first one is we, in the beginning of this crisis, actually allowed any registered users to be able to read any coronavirus-related content for free without charge. And our second one was a partnership with Verizon. We felt that it was very important that we allowed our younger consumers to be able to have access to the great content that we produce. So in partnership with Verizon, we are actually allowing all high school students in the United States to have free access to our core news products. So we can, fulfill our mission, which is to seek the truth and help people understand the world.
That's awesome. Thanks, Michael. Can't wait to unpack that in more detail, especially your responsibilities in managing quite a big team and all the different missions that you guys have at the New York Times. Daryl, in terms of your sector, if there's ever been one that's had to pivot and pivot fast, it's retail, especially a retailer as big and as essential as Walmart. And I guess over the last 5 years, Walmart has surpassed everyone's expectations when it comes to how agile and innovative you guys really are, and how you guys actually have become a digital leader in driving greater synchronicity between e-commerce and online, essentially omni-channel strategy and execution. And I know that's a large part of your remit. How have the last few months looked like for you when trying to galvanize your omni-channel initiative and team around a clear mission that's slightly a moving target right now, and also adjusting and reprioritizing your product roadmap?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. We went into the year with a solid plan on keep the regular drumbeat of customer acquisition going, sustain growth, but really we wanted to focus in on experience and retention and giving a great experience every time. And so that was kind of our game plan. And then overnight, we see the customer adoption curve swings hard to the right. All of a sudden, you go from sub 5% households to 1/3 of households want to, buy online. Happens overnight. And, this is our product, our specifically our online grocery service and our e-commerce, is really a dance of operational excellence and digital innovation coming together to kind of play together. And so we had to shift very, very fast and change everybody's mindset. And the first thing that I realized was clear was you had to take people out of this mindset around driving top line revenue and delivering on bottom line profit. You had to get people rallied around this idea that we were an essential service. People needed us for the very essentials of life. And not getting a grocery slot, as an example, is very problematic, especially if you're in those vulnerable populations. So we moved away from this plan around experience and rallied the entire organization around capacity and building capacity very, very fast. That means we need to have pickers in our stores picking groceries. We need to have our delivery infrastructure ramp up. So a lot of operational focus on that side. And then on the digital product side, we had to make sure that we could enable that quickly. So for example, we stood up a Tiger team, which was a group of product managers and engineers from different sides of our tech stack, different expertise, and business leaders, brought them all together into this Tiger team where we decentralized decision making and allowed for decisions to make quickly with almost no sort of levels of the standard bureaucracy that sometimes goes through these large organizations. And so we were able to make decisions quickly. For example, leave my groceries for me on my porch. That would be something that would take forever sometimes to do with food compliance and everything else, but we managed to turn it around in 4 days. Wow. So it really shifted us. And so now as we ramped up and are able to serve the capacity of the nation, we're continuing to focus on that. We can go back to this, now let's make it great. Let's make it a great experience so that as the COVID sort of peak sort of levels out, now we can start retaining customers again. So really, we really had to accelerate our project map extensively forward.
Amazing. Wow. Congratulations on achieving that dual responsibility of growth and also your communities and getting the essentials to them. So thank you for that too. I want to move into a little bit of a group discussion, starting with some individuals kicking off the answers. And let's start with that last point you made, Daryl, which was around kind of the accelerated roadmaps. And I think, Maria, let's have you pick this one up first in terms of how are your plans affected? You did mention at the very beginning, the bot wasn't a new idea, but what you mentioned how quickly you had to accelerate that roadmap. And could you share a little bit more information around how you did that? To Daryl's point, how did you remove the levels of bureaucracy in terms of decision making to make sure that you could bring this to the market sooner?
Yes, so we're a bank. We do not accelerate decision making the way you can do in many other businesses. So none of our, legal compliance risk, none of those processes changed. It's just that people worked triple as hard and triple as long. This has been truly like the definition of teamwork has been to get the necessary approvals on things that were fast-tracked, accelerated. But I actually really liked how Daryl kind of framed, we went from this whole very experiential approach to our roadmap to this very different approach. And we kind of had to do the same thing. We had panned out initially, the roadmap had all of these milestones for how we were going to bring the bot experience to bigger to follow on segments of customers, to new channels, et cetera. And it was, it kind of had logic and cadence to it and taking into account everyone's workload. So we essentially did that. We expanded to Android, and we're just about to expand to browser within 2.5-3 months. Which is just a tremendous amount of work. So that's one thing we did. We are, some of the intents that the bot is able to deliver today and wasn't able only, 4 weeks ago, that have to do with the current COVID scenarios, such as now the bot is able to waive a late fee, something that was slotted for Q4, if I remember correctly. And again, we delivered that within a month. Some things that we're now reprioritizing was bringing the bot to the population of our customers who are dealing with collections issues. We expect, sadly, that segment to be growing in the coming months, and we want to make sure that we're serving those customers across our channels, including the bot, in the most sensitive, best way possible. We also, from research, know, and this is kind of an interesting insight that we found, is that actually customers who have issues with collections are, overdue on their payments, are trying to figure out a way to settle overdue payments. They actually prefer to self-serve if they can. It's a much more empathetic way to enable the customer to self themselves than to route them to an agent where the conversation perhaps becomes a little too sensitive. Yeah. So those things that we had planned out, we're bringing up front, and then we're trying to take a longer view. What are the things that are actually going to be big bang for buck from a customer standpoint, from an operational standpoint? And forbearance, collections are one of those things, versus things that are really short term. So one thing, for any decision making, your strategy is also the choices you don't choose to make. So we've chosen not to build out an intent around PPP, for example. We knew it would be a quick spike, but a really quick, decrease as well. So we didn't prioritize it. So those are the things that we have taken into account and will continue to take into account as the situation evolves.
Yeah, and I want to evolve the question to Michael in terms of prioritization of initiatives, because Maria's situation is the bot and was quite clearly focused on the bot. You had a few initiatives, I believe, at the New York Times that you were trying to deliver upon. How did you assess which were the most important, and how are you galvanized around the ones you're working on now?
Right. So with my portfolio of products, I would say the biggest kind of impact Cultivators had on our roadmap was some of the more experimental and kind of like machine learning and AI type of capabilities to our portfolio are now going to be delayed and more focused on more value now. Types of initiatives, more focused again to our kind of focus on growth and engagement initiatives. And especially when we talk about email, there's a very clear value of how email is one of the most consistent and trusted channels in terms of marketing and engaging with your users. So, anything that, did not align with that has kind of been put on the back burner for the time being until we can get to a place where we all feel that we're ready to start working on something new.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's really helpful. I think we're going to touch on now the processes of how you were able to. Now you've got your strategic direction, and now you're working from home and remotely. How have the processes evolved, Daryl, in terms of your cross-functional teams trying to do so much in so little time effectively? How has that evolved for yourself and your team in delivering so quickly? What are the new principles and methodologies or tools that you're using to collaboratively work together? And I'd love all of you to build upon this too.
Yeah, thank you. I need to touch bases on one point, and Maria kind of reminded me to this. Just because we went fast, we didn't cut corners on anything on the ethics and compliance side. I can imagine already there's somebody's radar bell going off that we changed all the rules, cut corners, did it right, but we just did it fast. No breaking of rules over here. The process is, the way they change really is much more communication, much more active communication between teams. And I think a recognition that people actually started to work incredibly long hours. So there's a little bit of adjustment in terms of work hours and being flexible around that. I think that's an important part to note, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit later. The other thing is, and I know we're going to touch on this, not having all the information is okay. We did not have, a lot of our decisions were, 70% data and 30% instinct, and that's okay. And it might not have been, generally we would have tried to be a lot higher on the data side, knowing exactly how the business case was going to play out. That by removing some of those needs and being a little bit risk adverse, a little bit more risk adverse on some of these decisions, we were able to do it. I think an important guidepost we put for ourselves was, and I think Maria alluded to this a little bit, is we tried not to build functionality that would have no place in a post-COVID world. There is a world here that eventually looks normal-ish at some point. If the tech or the experience or product we're going to build out has no place in that post-COVID world, then we probably voted it down. But if it had a place, then it had some way that could help. I'll give you a great example. We launched a service where we would do pickups, we would do drop-offs of grocery directly to hospitals. You would say, well, maybe in a post-COVID world that won't be necessary, but remote pickups can be deployed anywhere. Maybe we figure out how to use the same technology to deploy to universities or condos or other sort of remote pickup locations. So that's something that's not necessarily throwaway. If the need to help healthcare workers goes away, we still have a product that we can deploy in other ways. So we tried to think about, the way we come to a business decision, give it, put less focus on knowing the answer 100%, as well as that sort of counterpoint, which is, will it be still valid post-COVID?
Yeah, absolutely. And Michael, in terms of our conversations beforehand, you had some good principles that you were applying to your teams. You just touched on, Daryl, the amount of work that is going in right now. It's like 3 days in one. Everyone's hustling. How are you motivating your teams?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. The one thing I will say that I'm very proud of the organization about is we prided ourselves on, pre-COVID, to be a remote-friendly organization. So I have many members of my different teams who were already remote. And so we were able to have, them kind of lead and give advice to other members of the teams of how you can manage your day, primarily being remote. So I think it's definitely been a collaboration, across the organization, but also with team members that were already kind of, living their lives and their work days in a remote focused route. And then also I want to say, it's a balance between staying consistent with our different meetings and our scrums and our different ceremonies, and also being flexible to be able to adjust. So we have members of my team who are parents and they have many children. So being able to be sympathetic to that and make adjustments to the schedule, I think are really important. And last, I would say, is just maintaining work-life balance. We really emphasized across my teams to make sure that we're not working extended hours, even though, we're working on 3 times the amount of work in the same amount of time. I really think it's really important to have some sort of work-life balance, especially during a stressful time like this.
I want to move into user testing, because in product managers' responsibilities is making sure you're working on feature sets and products that are actually going to be welcomed and used by your target audiences. Now in this world of the lockdown and remote user testing, I'd like to hear a little bit around how this is going. How have you adapted your user testing approach, and what tips you might be able to provide the product managers tuning in, and designers for that matter, who are conducting remote user testing for the first time. Perhaps, who would like to start with this one in terms of the most amount of user testing going on? Maria, should we go over to you in terms of the bot?
Yeah, sure. I mean, to be honest, I don't think that I have a lot to share on that. We've always done remote user testing. We use a variety of different tools. Within my team, research actually doesn't sit within my team. It's a dedicated resource, sort of like center of excellence. They have a fantastic process and framework for running these remote user testing sessions. It's done every 2 weeks. It's a full day. They test between 4 and sometimes 12 different new experiences that we're trying to hone in on. I believe they use a blend of InVision and another sort of remote user testing platform. It's just a really smooth sailing type of a process. So there's no new learnings. We've always done it that way.
Yeah. Perhaps Daryl, from your standpoint at Walmart, you guys have a lot more sort of moving parts going on.
Yeah, so maybe I could break this one out into sort of user testing and then post-transaction surveys and how we leverage those. So user testing, very similar to Maria, we have some amazing front-end product teams that are in continuous cycles with user testing groups remotely as well. We did physical stuff, and then we also moved into remote testing. And so at the beginning, like literally COVID crisis plus a month, we again, it was a little bit of instinct and a little bit of data, and we moved quite fast in some of those things. And now as the team starts to figure out how the new experience needs to play out, they're doing a lot more testing around the ease of, before speed was critical, right? Speed of transaction was critical, and maybe speed is not as critical as it used to be. Maybe people have a little bit more time to browse the site and to look at different components. And so maybe we have to think differently about how customers interact with content on site. And then a lot of the decisions around messaging for COVID-19, messaging for how we're going to interact with customers in the new age. A lot of that was, if I'm honest with you, instinctual at the beginning. And so now we'll get into good rhythms and cycles as it plays out. Survey data is extremely important to us, and we use a number of vehicles for that. Both we have on-site mechanisms, kind of like the 4 C's of the world, that help us with sort of on-site metrics. And then we have all of the operational components around what drives customers. What is very interesting is drivers of satisfaction have dramatically changed. Have dramatically changed. And so we have to think about what was important before is not as important now.
Mm-hmm. Your metrics are shifting. That's really interesting. And especially to that point you made around time, people pre-lockdown want things delivered on their doorstep immediately. Now people have different expectations. Maybe a day or two is okay, given everything going on. And maybe that's a behavior that sticks. Who knows? And Michael, from your standpoint, are you guys doing video user testing, or have you applied or adopted new remote user testing techniques?
Yeah, so we actually have stayed pretty consistent with what we've been doing for user testing. I, will agree with both that, we have separate teams that are focused, for example, in our growth mission. We have teams who are focused on the UX and the front end experience, and they have been doing a lot of front end remote user testing for a long time. And so they've been able to consistently repeat those types of tests and not have to make so many adjustments, which has been very great. And then also for our internal users, it has been a little more interesting because the best type of testing typically was, working with them directly in the office. But now we've had to make some adjustments in terms of new tools that we're looking at to try and see how we can replicate a remote type of experience to really try and get the appropriate data for our product decisions.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for that, guys. And now, with the realities of changing product features, new features, to your point, Daryl, COVID reality, what the business is doing to make sure everyone's safe and has access. How are you guys handling communication of your product changes to the marketplace? There's a responsibility there, and people are doing it different ways. Obviously, the product marketing teams are going to have more responsibility here. But having worked closely with those teams, are you guys able to share a little bit more on how you're making your new features and convenience and access more known to the marketplace? Perhaps start with you, Michael, based on the shift that you guys have seen there.
Yeah, absolutely. I will start with this, that in regards to communication, I think building the relationships both internally and with your customers should have started a long time ago. I think, having that type of strong relationship allows you to be able to communicate much quicker and create that consistency in terms of when they should be expecting communication coming from you. And internally, what we've also had to do is make sure we're just as proactive communicating important developments and changes to make sure that other teams can adjust as well. Many of the things we work on require a lot of collaboration with other teams within the organization. So it's never going to be an isolated decision when communication can go out. The hope was that we are communicating as early as possible so other teams can make the adjustments as well. And then externally, it's, as you said, working with our product marketing and PR teams to make sure that we're delivering clear and timely updates as soon as possible, and adjusting if anything kind of shifts as that's happening.
Yeah, Maria, on your front with the bot, I know that this was accelerated, and how were the teams prepared to make this more known to your audience who needed this information and this access based on the gap you had in your agents?
Yeah, so we did a few things. Most notably, we embedded, this was, again, never tried before. And it was one of those decisions that we had some hunches, not a lot of data, took a plunge and it worked. We embedded a QR code on our Contact Us page on the browser to route customers through to our mobile app. The reason why we did that was, at the time, and still the case, we did not have bot on browser. So all the conversations in the browser were going straight to live agents. Obviously, phone lines already packed, huge volumes there. So routing customers through to the mobile app to download, digital appropriation of potentially previously non-digital customers. Again, a huge opportunity, but mostly because they started out with the bot experience, the bot was able to help a subset of those intents coming through, contain them, relieve some of the pressure on live agents. So that was one thing we did. Another thing we did, we accelerated the Android rollout. That doubled our mobile coverage in 3 weeks, I think 3-4 weeks. And now the browser is going to, again, double what we've already doubled in the past month. So with the bot, really, there's only very few vectors that we're playing with. It's volumes and containment, right? If we're able to bring the bot to bigger volumes of customers, we're winning. If we're able to better contain them within the bot experience where they're not getting handed over to the agent, again, we're winning. So those two things have in many ways defined our approach for the product strategy amid COVID, and moving forward is something that we're still considering. And in terms of communicating this to the customers, we are already your first place if you need help. We're your pit stop, right? So we're already there for mobile, and we're going to be there shortly for browser. And in that way, we're covering the full spectrum of channels.
Amazing.
Can I just hit on this one, Ian? Do you have time? Yeah, so I think I've never seen in our history a mobilization of marketing, PR marketing, and store channels so connected. And so we've definitely leveraged that PR message to get more of our communication out. And because we're an essential service, I think customers are listening more to what we're saying about how we're upgrading our service day in and day out. We've used letters from the CEO in a very unique way, directly to customers, both sort of written letters and also just messages on Instagram, et cetera, Facebook, where the CEO kind of plays out all the new functionality that we're putting out in the market. And that has been tremendously powerful. So getting our message out through PR and normal communication methods, and also email, marketing, social, it's been fantastic to see us mobilize that and be very connected.
Amazing. Thanks for the build. Yeah, it's funny. In the furnace of the time that we're in, we're seeing this move towards greater collaboration and urgency, to your point, Maria. And I think that shifts nicely into the next question I have is where we might be going and what behaviors from product managers do we think might stick and might benefit this practice going forward into the future. I think this one is really important as we think about a blended future of in-person collaboration, remote collaboration, principles for communication, and cross-functional collaboration with designers, marketing, product management, and developers, and making sure that everything's moving in the right direction. I think, Maria, let's start with you in terms of what do you think is going to stick from a way of working standpoint?
Yeah. It's a really good question. I think for product as a discipline, it has been a really great way to remind ourselves how products should be run, how roadmaps should be prioritized, how to, cultivate a healthy backlog. It's just been such a tangible example and reaffirmation of some of the really great principles of product management, right? Like stay really close to your customers and really in sync with their needs. Understand your business limitations, like technical feasibility limitations. Make sure that whatever you do decide to prioritize, you understand the trade-offs of all the other things that you choose not to do. Sometimes starting from that standpoint is actually, I found more helpful, especially in a crisis like this. And I think, for any product manager which is probably any product manager who's ever run into a holy crap situation for whatever reason, I think, don't let a good crisis go to waste is a big learning for all of us in this unique moment. Finding silver lining for all the things that we're going through and the extra hard work that we're putting into this, and finding that silver lining, super key. That is the part that makes the urgency palatable for the team. And bringing positive, I think the best product managers are incredibly positive, but hugely realistic. And that's the kind of fine balance that a good crisis not going to waste can help reaffirm.
That's great insight. Thank you so much. Anyone else want to build on that?
Yeah, I can build. The one other, I think, Maria, your answer was bang on, so I won't reiterate any of the points. But we have a lot of discussions on our end around build or buy, and I think buying or partnering is a very interesting trend or change in how we should look at product cycles. I think we should be, we for sure are partnering way more than we would have, and that's interesting, right? You have time on your hands, so you want to build it. You don't have time, you're okay to buy it. And what does that teach us about being okay with relinquishing control of our own product sometimes? So I think this buy build balance that we sometimes go through, and those really tough internal discussions might be a little bit easier now. And Maria, your point around really good habits formed, or really this is the way product should work. And so it's reaffirming those habits, I think, is a really strong point.
Yeah, and I'll add one additional comment. Absolutely, I agree with everything you both said. Is for our external users, we have an audience insights team that we work very closely to kind of understand how our users and consumers are interacting with our many different products. But I also think that it's important that, especially during a time now, that we spend a little more time understanding how our internal products are being used and consumed, especially since these are our coworkers and our partners internally that are helping to deliver these experiences as well. And so this is something that I have made sure I am emphasizing as well with the product decisions that we're doing across my portfolio.
That's all really helpful, guys. And especially when you think about the importance of making the right business decisions in this environment is going to help the foundational principles of making decisions around priorities going forward, which will help just focus your teams in the right direction. Okay, guys, we've got 10 minutes to go, and I think we're going to dive into some Q&A here from the audience. If you don't mind just holding on while I open this up and get into some of these questions. The point you made earlier around the importance of introducing products that can exist post-COVID. It's still uncertain at this point in time to know whether the need will still be as profound in the new normal for certain products. With this uncertainty in mind, how do you manage the sales growth expectations post-COVID, especially after this period of extreme exponential growth in I guess, the grocery space?
Yeah, so our world is really about, how many people we can convert and what is the size of the basket, right? In COVID times, it was really about acquisition. And now it will move to maintaining a good, healthy basket size and customers coming back. I mean, that's, that is the reality. So the decisions that we're making really are, if you focus now, if what I talked about at the beginning around shift from capacity to experience, if we focus now on experience and make our online grocery or our e-commerce experience so robust and so convenient that customers can't see a world where they go back to, conventional, traditional shopping, then I think we've won. And, from my perspective, there's always, I'm not saying for a second that online grocery is the only way. We believe in a world where customers shop us in all channels. And I think that happens, but customers will be less tentative about trying online products and shopping online. So if we focus now on our experience, we know we have, I think there was a question there around availability, clearly as people went into sort of panic mode, there's the fluctuations in the supply chain. And so we're actively coming up with ways to fill those products back in and make it and improve the experience so people can get what they want. And if we do that, I think, we're going to have a very strong business. We know that it's going to slow down a little bit from that acquisition side, but we don't actually see it going back to pre-COVID numbers at all.
Yeah.
There's a new level here. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving to Michael, you mentioned some things that got delayed, like machine learning, for example. Are there examples of things that, given the new normal, you've decided these are things that are no longer valid, even in a post-COVID world?
That's a really great question. So things that we think are just no longer valid. So the good news is, I spend a lot of time, my team spends a lot of time of really understanding our user needs. So spending as much time looking at the data, both quantitative and qualitatively, looking at industry trends to really try and make sure that anything we are working on now or pre-COVID actually would reflect, a great product experience moving into the future. So I wouldn't be able to say there's anything major that we wouldn't consider in the future, but I would just want to say that, it's all about planning ahead as much as you possibly can and making sure that anything you decide to work on is something that could, be effective at any time.
Yeah, awesome.
Actually, can I build on that, Ian? Bot is obviously an AI product, so there's a whole, underlying work stream around it that helps continuously improve it, essentially train the AI to be better and better with every release. And one thing that we've been toying with in COVID is, do we train it for long term? Do we train it for short term? I think that's a really hard decision to make. Certain intents that we cater to are very, there's a heightened need around them amid COVID, and the intents that are flowing in sound differently. They come out from customers in a different manner.
Mm-hmm.
Do we train it? Do we not? There's just, I think it's a really interesting, specifically for AI products, it's a really interesting moment to think about how you build out, how you improve, how you train those products.
Certainly. Yeah. Thank you, Maria. There's a question here around coaching, and the question's from Connie. She's saying, I was wondering if you've seen or see a greater need for online training or coaching of a team to deal with the pace and direction of changes, as well as new team member onboarding, and if you have any tools or best practices you can share. Anyone want to pick that one up in terms of team onboarding in this time?
Yeah, it's definitely less personal. I think we should recognize that it creates a lot of, it's a tough thing for someone to come into an organization and get a laptop, sort of couriered to them, and how do you get them on board? And I'm hoping, I see that work will be much more flexible in the future. This has taught us how to be more flexible. And I think, again, like anything, the answer is somewhere in the middle. We won't go fully work from home, but we won't necessarily frown upon it as much as we might have in the past. So I think we need to find, once the restrictions lift a little bit, we need to find balances of those physical interactions and bringing people on board in a connected way, and then also being very flexible to let people work the way it works for them and how they feel safe. And I think, platforms like BrainStation, anything that can help with people's education, that they will need to equip them for this very different way of working, right? You might not have the tools anymore in your toolbox to work in this very virtual way on a number of fronts. And so helping people do that transition into this new age is going to be, I think, very important. So a workforce change, a kind of shift in workforce, allowing people to adopt virtual tools, any of those type of coaching or training tools would be very important, I think, in the future.
Amazing.
I want to challenge one thing, because I agree that, it's a lot more difficult to onboard a new team member when we're all remote, but there's something very personal about all of us working from our own spaces, our own homes. I think I was literally just extending an offer to a candidate last week, and, on a video, him sitting in his living room, me sitting in my living room, and kind of, shaking on the deal. And there's something really nice about that. I get to witness a different part of his life that otherwise I would never get to witness. So just wanted to call it out.
Yeah.
And I want to add one more thing. One of the things that we've done in our team for new members is we've had like onboarding parties for new members, because I think the most critical piece is for them to build a relationship with the rest of the team and feel comfortable, so they don't have to worry about, am I doing the right thing, or am I doing something wrong? And so we've spent a lot of time with having like happy hours on onboarding parties via Zoom and other video products.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for those questions, everyone that put them in, and for the answers. I'm going to summarize with 3 points that people can take away from this discussion, and have you guys get back to your day. The first is that brands have had to adjust product roadmaps and throw resources behind making these changes. Many have enabled quicker decision making, but the challenge is not to sacrifice quality. That's the first point. The second is prioritization of initiatives is key, but you have to understand the trade-offs at the same time. Would something you're doing now, be in place post-COVID and have value post-COVID? And lastly, metrics are shifting. What was important before may not be important now, and remote user testing is essential, but sometimes you have to just follow your instinct. I think that summarizes a lot of the points we've hit on today. And I just want to thank our panelists again for the valuable time you've spent. Maria, I know you've got a big meeting you've got to go to. Thank you to everyone that's tuned in. If you've enjoyed this, tune into the next one. We have these every month. So it's a pleasure to host you. Have a wonderful rest of the week, guys. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.